Hooty hoo, all my stock market gamblers. Welcome today. I'm Tall Mike. I'm so glad you're here. Well, we got that stock market still going up, right? Still trying to push to new record highs every day. They make a new record high. But we're having a topping process right now, and it takes a little time to play out. Maybe we're another week before we start coming down. I actually think we're going to start coming down probably the day after the Fed announcement. The Fed's going to come out and we're not going to raise interest rates. We're not going to lower interest rates. We're going to keep interest rates exactly the same. They're not going to do a thing, and the market's not going to like it that much. See, the market is expecting 5 or 6 rate cuts this year. Now, to get 5 or 6 rate cuts, the Fed is going to have to start cutting really soon. But they're not ready to start cutting yet. Now, they're not going to raise. But they're not ready to start cutting yet. But the Fed admits that they're going to cut 3 times this year, and they very well may. That's called the Fed pivot. The Fed's going to cut. But what we have in the stock market is a classic double top, right? 2 years ago, we're at the same place we are now. We had this big drop, and now we've risen up to where we were exactly 2 years ago. That's a big double top. Okay, now a lot of people think we've broken above it because we hit the new record high, and they think that that constitutes a new bull market where we're just going to run up. Now, the reason I don't see it that way is you only got, 6 or 7 stocks that are really pulling this thing up. The rest of the stocks, they're not going up. Look at the IWM. That's the small caps. Small caps still down a lot from its record high. Hasn't hit a new record high. You got those 6 or 7 stocks that pull up the rest of the market in the S&P. S&P had a new high, right? So, but it's really a double top, overshot a little bit, but this is where we're going to start to come down. Okay, you see what we have right now is a lot of retail buyers. Retail buyers are trying to push the market higher, and they can be right for a while. I'm not saying they can't. A lot of people think we're going to hit 5,000. 5,000 is kind of a magnetic number, right? I mean, it's a big round number on the S&P, 5,000, right? And maybe we get pulled up to that level, but I don't think so. I think we're going to turn before we get there. I think we're going to turn, this week, probably, maybe tomorrow, maybe we start today. It doesn't really matter, but I do think the market's going to come down. That's just my take. Now let's get over to what's going on in the other market, the big real estate market, right? The big news this week was that Evergrande. Evergrande is China's largest developer, right? China's largest developer. They're now into forced liquidation. They're forced to liquidate their properties, right? They're bankrupt. They're insolvent. They have no money. So they're forced to start selling off their properties at fire sale prices, right? So China's going to be dropping by 50% in their housing market, their real estate market. Europe already down 30% in many Europe countries, but they're dropping right. So China started 50%, then Europe 30%. Canada's already coming in. Canada's still very overpriced, but they're starting to come down. Some areas already down 25%, but they're still overpriced. A long way to fall up in Canada. They're not close to done. And everybody says, but Mike, I live in the United States. We could never fall here, especially not in my neighborhood. We got the Moon Boys in my neighborhood, and we only push prices higher. Prices are going to double. They're going to triple. They're going to quadruple. It's not the way I see it. The United States is going to come down about 40% in the housing market. Now, why do I say that? I say that because it's the debt. It's the debt. And it's the debt of the average homeowner. It's the debt of the government. It's the debt of the corporations. Everything's at a record high, right? There's debt. So right now, U.S. government, $35 trillion. $35 trillion in debt. That's a lot of money, but it's not done there. They're printing $1 trillion every quarter. Every quarter is $1 trillion. We're going to hit probably 40 trillion by the end of the year, right? Okay, now here's the thing. So they got to print $4 trillion. We don't have the money. We're flat broke now. I mean, we got this, we run deficits, trading deficits, right? In the old days, we used to produce things, and we used to have a country based on wealth, based on production. Now we have a country based on debt, based on poverty, based on debt. Debt. It's the debt. Okay, 35 trillion going to be 40 trillion by the end of the year. So they're going to print at least 4 trillion, at least $4 trillion. We don't have that. But what you don't realize is we have another 8 trillion that's coming due. Okay, so 8 trillion plus 4 trillion, that's $12 trillion. $12 trillion. This year, we got to sell the bonds. We got to sell the bonds. But the thing is, to who? To who? Who are we going to sell them to? Nobody wants to buy them. You want to loan the government money for 30 years? I don't. I don't. The government's insolvent. Now, what they're doing is they're running a Ponzi scheme, right? And it's very hard to taper a Ponzi scheme. The government says they're going to taper spending. You cannot taper a Ponzi scheme. Just ask Bernie Madoff. Wait, I think Bernie died. Oh, well, if he were alive, he would tell you that you cannot taper a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme, you got to keep printing more and more and more. And that's what the U.S. government's doing. They're running a Ponzi scheme. They have over 100 trillion unfunded liabilities, 35 trillion, going to be 40 trillion by the end of the year. I mean, that's what they're openly admitting, a trillion a quarter. They're openly saying, yeah, we'll be at 40 trillion. Don't worry about it. We're going to print money. We got the reserve currency. Well, here's the problem. Okay, so you got a couple things that could happen here. The United States could default. And we all know that's not going to happen. That would be too painful. That would send everything crashing down. That would be painful. You see, the rich people, they would get hurt. You see, right now, the rich people have never been more wealthy. The gap between the rich and the poor has never been greater. Not even in the Great Depression has the gap been as extreme as it is now. You see, just in the last 3 years during the pandemic, what happened? Well, the rich people got incredibly wealthy. I mean, look at the top 10%. I mean, their net worth is skyrocketed. Top 1%, the billionaires just tacked on billions and billions and billions of dollars. But what happened to the average person? Let's call it the bottom 90%. The bottom 90%, they have less money now than they did before the pandemic started. They have much less money. Most of them are flat broke. Most of them are in major debt. Do you realize the average household has over $100,000 in debt? I'm not counting the mortgage. Not counting the mortgage, over $100,000 in debt, the average household. But they're way farther in debt than that. They don't even realize how far in debt they are. Do you realize every man, woman, and child is over $100,000 in debt in the United States just because we got to pay back the 35 trillion. Just do the math. Over 100,000 every man, woman, and child. Man, woman, and child, right? You just want to count the taxpayers. Taxpayers, it's $250,000 per taxpayer. So you tack on that 100,000 that the average family household is in debt. Let's say they got 2 taxpayers. They're over 600,000 in debt, not counting the mortgage. But Mike, my mortgage is paid off. I'm fine. Great. Send your $100,000 into the government. If you're a taxpayer, send your $250,000 into the government. Government needs it. They're running a Ponzi scheme. And that Ponzi scheme's going to continue. See, we've reached a point of no return. You see, right now, the debt to GDP is 128%. 128% debt to GDP. Okay, let's just call it 130%. Do you realize that no country has ever come back from this? No country. Will the United States be the first one to make it out alive? I don't think so. What's happened? The country either defaulted or they hyperinflated. And my guess is we're probably going to go the hyperinflation route because we're already waving the white flag. I mean, we're waving the white flag. We can't compete with inflation. Inflation's taking off again. Inflation's going up. Look at the price of oil starting to go back up. A lot of people say, but Mike, oil's going to come back down. And maybe it will, but inflation is not going to go down. It's going up. It's going up, going up, going up. Look at the M2 money supply. There was a short period of time where it started to come down. Now we're headed back up again. We're inflating. We're going to go hyperinflation. The reason hyperinflation over a default, Default would hurt all the rich people. We don't want that. If you hyperinflate, you're going to kill off a lot of the poor people. They're not going to be able to afford to eat, and they're definitely not going to be able to live indoors. I mean, it's pretty sad what's going on. There's really not a way out at this point. I mean, the damage has been done. We elected these officials. They got us into this mess, and there's no way out. There really isn't. Maybe we have a debt jubilee, right? Okay, let's talk about that. You see, right now we got an election year coming, and there's going to be more stimulus sent out. I mean, maybe they're going to let you take $1,000 off your mortgage payment. I talked about that last time. I mean, if you're going to college, you'd just be a fool to pay for your college. Look, you just go get these student loans. You're not going to have to pay them back. Biden keeps forgiving them, right? I mean, what a precedence that's setting. Okay, let's teach the young kids they don't need to pay their student loans back. So what? Well, do they have to pay their credit cards back? No, they don't need to pay the credit cards back. What about their car loan? They can go out and get a car loan. Don't pay that back either. Let's just print the money. And why not? Taxes? People aren't sending in their tax money. I know that's weird. That's why they hired all these extra IRS agents so they can come after everybody. They're really going after the people that took out the PPP loans. Those are getting like instant audits. If you got a PPP loan, you better have your financials in order because they're coming to look at you. Okay, so that might be a good thing. There was a lot of fraud in the PPP loans. But my point is, we're teaching this precedent where you don't have to pay back your debt. You can go out and borrow, the buy now, pay later. Go out and borrow and never pay it back. You don't have to. Why? If they are dumb enough to give you the money, well, they should know you're going to spend it. And then you don't have any money to give them back. Okay, they should just know better. But that's what's going on, right? So maybe we should have this debt jubilee, right? I mean, the Bible talks about a jubilee, right? It happened every 7 years, I think, in the Bible where people were released from their debts. So the government could print, well, just call $1.5 trillion for car loans, all right, another $1 trillion for credit cards, another $1.5 trillion for student loans. I mean, what is that? 3, 4, 5, $4 trillion. Let's call it $5 trillion. Let's round up. I mean, look at the money we're printing now. We print $4 trillion a year anyways. Where does it go? It goes to big corporations, goes overseas to fight the wars. Maybe we should have a debt jubilee. Maybe the government should just print the money. Maybe we should just go full on socialism and just blow this thing up quickly. See, right now we're at a slow burn, right? I mean, we're just burning out, right? I mean, we're just grinding it to 90%. They're just circling the drain. The 10%, the 1%, they're loving it. They're loving it. They got Jerome Powell in their back pocket. He's going to inflate his way out of this. He's not going to let the government default. That's not going to happen. So the poor people, they're just going to be grinding lower. Poor being 90%. If you're in the bottom 9%, if you're not in the top 10%, you're probably headed lower. Your standard of living is going to go lower. You're probably already noticing it. I mean, look, when you go to the grocery store, you can't buy what you could before. I mean, look at even just the common things like utility bills. Utility bills through the roof, just skyrocketing. People are freezing. They can't heat their home. They don't have any money. They heat their home. They don't have any money for food. The standard of living is going down, right? In the United States, in the country I love, in the country I was born and raised in. How did we let this happen? We let this happen by voting for idiots. That's what we do. We vote for idiots. Well, they only give us 2 idiots to vote for, right? I mean, that's all they give us. If they gave us more idiots, maybe we could get one that's less of an idiot. I don't know. Maybe the system's got to be revamped. You young people, when this does blow up, and you're going to rebuild the system, I pray you guys are smart enough to get rid of the Federal Reserve before you rebuild the system, because they're the ones that stole all the money. You look at the charts, I mean, where they came in power, they've taken 97% of your purchasing power away from you. 100 years before that, your purchasing power increased. It doubled. It doubled the 100 years before that. You put in the Federal Reserve, you lost 97%. These are criminals. It's public enemy number one. I mean, I don't know, maybe YouTube now going to take my channel down, but we'll see what happens. I think you can still say stuff like that. You guys want the truth. A lot of people don't want the truth. They want want to put their head in the sand. I got a lot of friends like that. I start talking about this stuff. I lost a lot of friends by talking about this stuff. That's actually kind of why I started this channel. Now, if you like this stuff, go ahead, give me the thumbs up. Go ahead, tell a friend that might like this channel. Maybe we can grow the community a little bit bigger. Maybe we can wake some people up to see what's coming. Something wicked this way comes. Something evil's coming. Something evil. Evil. It's not going to be good. Maybe we have a year left, maybe 2, maybe even 3. Much more than that. I'd really bet a lot of money against it. Matter of fact, I am betting against it. I'm being my own central banker. I'm buying gold. I'm buying gold and silver because that's what the central banks are stocking up on. They're not stocking up on the U.S. bonds anymore. They're selling those off. They're dumping them. They don't want them. The central banks say, give me gold and silver. We'll take our chances. I believe them. That's what I'm doing. Give me the thumbs up. Get out there, everybody. Enjoy the day, but punch that subscribe button. Bye-bye now.